Hello, everyone, and welcome to McGill Cares, a webcast series supporting family and informal caregivers of people living with dementia. I'm Claire Webster, a former caregiver, certified dementia care consultant, and founder of McGill University's Dementia Education Program. I work with a dynamic team of leading healthcare professionals at McGill University to oversee this program, who include Dr. José Moret, the Director of the Division of Geriatric Medicine, and Dr. Serge Gauthier, Professor Emeritus in the Departments of Neurology and Psychiatry. McGill Cares is supported by the Amelia Saputo Community Outreach for Dementia Care. The McGill University Dementia Education Program offers a comprehensive range of free multilingual resources to educate and support people who are living with dementia, their families and caregivers, healthcare professionals, and medical students. We invite you to visit our website at mcgill.ca/dementia, where you can access educational guides, online courses, activity videos, and virtual support groups, and much more. You can also find past recordings of McGill Cares webcasts to view at your convenience. Since launching this webcast series in May of 2020, we have interviewed 116 guests and produced over 130 episodes. So today I am so excited for the topic about let's talk about aging parents. And my incredible guest is Laura Tamblyn Watts, who is widely regarded as one of the foremost authorities on aging and longevity. As CEO of CanAge, she leads Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization. A lawyer and assistant professor at the University of Toronto, Laura conducts research on topics including dementia, age tech, financial regulation, elder abuse, and loneliness. Laura is the author of an international best-selling book, Let's Talk About Aging Parents, a real-life guide to solving problems with 20 essential conversations, which is now available in 9 languages across 12 countries. This book addresses some of the most sensitive and often avoided topics that families face as parents grow older, from staying at home safely to moving to retirement residence, to finances, driving, health concerns, and even the emotional realities of love and loss. So I'm so excited for Laura to be here. I think we could have had a 3-hour conversation. So I encourage everyone to pick up a copy of her book. Welcome to McGill Cares.
Thanks so much for having me, Claire. And it's so much fun to spend time with you again today.
So let's begin. So if you can just tell our audience a bit about your background and what motivated you to write this book.
So I'm a lawyer by training, and I've been a lawyer for, for 25 years. I haven't counted recently, but it's been a long time. But I spend my time in not-for-profit and public interest law. And so really thinking about how we can make things better for people across the way. And I focused almost exclusively on aging for most of my career. I've done a Center of Excellence on Law and Aging. I've been doing advocacy, running Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization. And people would call me, friends, colleagues, people who are in the community, and say, what do I do about? My mom is starting to have, memory lapses. My dad's driving. He probably shouldn't be. I don't know how to have a conversation about this. And I kept wanting there to be a book to hand people, because you have enough time to talk about 1 or 2 different things, but you're like, the question you're asking me is probably the tip of the iceberg, or it's not maybe the biggest question you're asking me. You're asking me about driving, but actually let's talk about why you're concerned with driving. And think about, Claire, all the books you have around pregnancy, childhood, early years, and then look at the shelf to figure out, what are you going to do for you? And when we think about aging parents, it's really important to say it's a short form. It's anybody, right? It could be a spouse. It could be a friend. It could be a sibling. It could be a neighbor. It could be anyone in your built family. It doesn't really matter, but it's just easier to say that. And I wanted to have a book to help real people, not this idea of this perfect family. I've never met one of those families. Mm-hmm. I wanted it not to be one person's journey with the old hand and the young hand. I wanted to be oh my God, I've got soccer practice in the morning to take 3 kids to school. I have a presentation due for my board. And my mom is calling me to tell me that she thinks someone's breaking in and stealing the bananas. How am I supposed to cope? That's why I wrote the book.
Well, and it's funny because what you just said, the three kids. So I was a caregiver to my late mother who had Alzheimer's disease. I had three kids, and I was always the soccer mom. And exactly, I was always dealing like as a woman, you're feeling like you're pulled in so many different directions. And I don't know, like I said to you just before we started the webcast, what I love about this book is that it validated the work that I'm doing with families right now. And because sometimes you have to have those very difficult conversations, and people have that hard time. And so you have essentially like there's 27 essential conversations about so many topics, right?
And
So
they're not like cute things, right? It's really important to remember. It's not this notion of how do you have this idealized conversation with your dad, or how is it that, premised on the fact that you and your siblings apparently adore each other, even though you actually can't stand each other. Like, it's not that. It's funny. It's real. It's got scripts in it. It's like, this is the nuclear option. This is what you can try to say if your dad is like this, or your friend is like that, or your cousin is like the other thing. And so it's supposed to meet people where they're at, and really pulls back this notion of this sort of mythological, and again, I'm using the term family in the broadest possible way, and helps people still get to invite to dinner on Sunday. Like, because this is the problem. People seem to think that, I'm gonna tell you what to do. That almost never works.
so there's so many different sections. So what I've done is I've really broken it down into different topics, which I'll go through. But to begin, like what are like people find it so hard? Like when is it the right time to begin these discussions? And then what are some of the common mistakes people or adult children make?
Let's start with the common mistakes, right? So people seem to have this narrative somewhere, or I don't know how we got it in our head, that you become the parent to your parent. You've probably heard that before, right? You're parenting your, no, you don't. No, you are always the kid. And I talked to my parents, just the other day. My parents are 88. I've supported many, many older relatives and folks in my life in addition. So that's not just these guys. And I asked my dad, how old do you think I am? He's like, I think you can drive. So you're probably like 17. I said, yeah, well, I'm 54, right? And it's important to remember that the last time I lived at home, I was 17, right? So it's important to remember you will not come in and tell your parents mostly what to do. That is usually not going to help out. Even if they're the kinds of people that go along with it, they'll say yes, yes, yes. But the answer is no. The other thing that doesn't work is thinking that you're going to have a one and done conversation. And I also had three kids. And I never learned that magic conversation I was supposed to have to tell my kids that they were supposed to, get up, clean their rooms. They were supposed to, learn to drive safely, that they were supposed to do their homework and get into it. Like, it's a series of evolving conversations based on who we actually are, our moods of the time, pressures that are occurring to us. So understand that this isn't like I'm going to come home I live in Quebec City. I'm going to come home to, the island, and I'm going to like sort everything out in a weekend. And people do that all the time. No, that doesn't work either. So really understanding who that person is and trying to approach it in ways that resonate for them is really important. The book was in 4 big chunks. The first big chunk is everything about where you live. And, helping people look through the house, like, can you age in this place? What do you need to do? What are some of the hacks that you can do if you have to move into some type or want to move into some type of congregate space? What might you look for? How do you try to figure out what the right fit is? What if you do need, and I'm going to use the term long-term care, but because, a CHLSD, if we're in Quebec or whatever, we're talking that 24/7 nursing type of experience. If you do need that, what's that going to be like? How do you manage, and so on? The second chunk is everything about who gets to decide. Mental capacity. And when I wrote the book, they wanted me to spend a lot of time on dementia. And I said, yes, of course, but I actually want to spend a lot of time in the chapter before of everything that affects cognitive mentality. But isn't dementia, because very often, and boy, Claire, you know this, very often people say, oh, but you're older, so you must have dementia. No, you might have a UTI. You might have a drugs interaction. So there's a whole chapter. So who gets to decide, powers of attorney in Quebec au mandat, something like that. The third chunk is everything about relationships, guilt, great divorce, what to do with the new love interest, and how do you manage that? And then the last is kind of the everything else. So technology, driving, and so on and so forth. The driving is the last chapter. So if you are up at 3 a.m. and you're worried, you can just find it quite easily.
Mhm. So let's unpack the different sections, okay? So we're going to start talking about home care and safety, okay? So how do you recommend approaching the conversation when parents want to remain in their home, but safety is becoming a concern?
Find out really clearly in your mind, and try to make sure there's an alignment with their mind, is what is the problem you're trying to solve for? And that sounds really obvious, but actually it's probably the most important thing you can do, right? So we often think to myself, okay, you know what? My mother lives in Sherbrooke. Actually, she doesn't live in Sherbrooke. She lives outside Sherbrooke. She's all alone in the big family house. There's 4 floors. There's long stairs. She's by herself. Her partner's passed away. She's in a rural community, not a lot of healthcare and supports. Okay, what is it that you're worried about? Are you worried about your mother falling? That's one set of things to solve for. Are you worried that she's alone? That's another set of things to solve for. Are you worried about transportation? She's in a rural community and she has a hard time getting around. That's another thing to solve for. Are you worried about incontinence or forgetfulness? Are you worried about, right? So really, no, you may be more than one thing you're worried about. Many, many studies will ask the same question. Where do you want to age? And everyone says in their own home.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, it's not a very good question, actually, is the problem, right? What they don't always ask is the more important question is, what's important to you in your life? Because if social relationships are important to you in your life and you live in a big rural community really far and you don't have an opportunity for socialization, that's actually, your own home. And it should change, or you should think about maybe moving people into your own home, or
Mhm.
right. So ask yourself very clearly, what are the problems we're trying to solve for? If they're worried about falling, okay, let's address falling. Maybe she lives on 1 floor.
Mhm.
Maybe you try to, the book goes through every room individually and helps you figure out how to change it. So you don't have a main floor bedroom, very common.
Mhm.
That dining room that nobody's eaten at since 2003, the one with like the plastic on it and the nice china and right, no one's ever eating there. Yeah. Oh, maybe shift that stuff out and put in a convertible bed. Usually it's very easy. Put some barn doors on it. All of a sudden you've got a main floor bedroom. So if you're worried about falling, she probably doesn't need to move. She probably just needs to adapt. If you're worried about falling, put double banisters. So go get a second banister and you reduce your falls risk by 56%. Stairs are not the problem. Falling is the problem, right? Now ask yourself, what is the problem we're really trying to solve for? And then figure out what's most important to their life. It may be that they actually want to move somewhere closer to town where they can walk to things and congregate. But the idea of moving is really, listen, if you've done it, it's not so much that they don't want to live somewhere different, it's that they actually don't want to experience the moving. Fair enough.
Which
So
is very
maybe
overwhelming, right? The thought of having to go through all of their things. And I think it's just that whole aspect of these are my things. What's going to happen to my things, right?
that I can't emphasize enough is so, so important. And just if you're looking at let's call it stuff, and there's an almost recreational hatred for your parents' stuff, right? I mean, I'm sure my kids hate my stuff, and I, may not like my parents' stuff. Um, but it's important to remember these are the characteristics of a person's life,
Mhm.
and you may not find them valuable because they're not your life. But if someone came into your house and decided to chuck everything that you had out and decide what you get to keep, I think you might have a different opinion on it. So the book also helps you go through, like, how do you downsize? How do you have those conversations? How do you make it so that it's not a traumatic experience for anyone?
So the one that I deal with in my work on a daily basis is okay. So one of the members of the couple or the persons living alone, now they start having cognitive
Sure.
issues, and it's time to introduce companion care because we
Yeah.
want to keep mom or dad at home for as long as possible. They are absolutely refusing to have a companion or professional caregiver at home.
Or my favorite is you actually do hire them and then they fire them.
Exactly, right?
That's the other one,
Right.
right? It's
Absolutely. Or
all
they don't let them
arranged.
in, they fire them. Okay, so how do we deal with that?
So if, first of all, if home care is available and if you can afford it. Now, that's not an unreasonable thing to talk about. Now, Quebec,
Absolutely.
frankly, I think has the best home care system. We all like to make fun of our own jurisdictions, but I actually think Quebec is the best community-based care model in the country. I really do. And has the best sort of mobile supports in care also. It doesn't mean it can't get better, but I think it's pretty good. So, you could use guilt. I'm literally, you got to go through what works for the trigger. So you can say things like, Mom, I know you don't really need the help, but this person really needs the job. You'd be right. They really need the job. I know it's a lot to ask that you're having this person come in and give you a hand, but like she's got a family to raise. And I say she because it's overwhelmingly women who are engaged in this. And, she's putting her kids through school. It would be really helpful if you could. I know you've always cared so much about education. She's trying to put her kids through school. I know you care so much about supporting new Canadians. She's just immigrated. And this is like, if she gets this job, she can stay here, right? Use whatever version appeals to that. Okay, so that doesn't work. You could use things like, listen, I am so worried about you. And I would too, like, if you could just, I know you always care about me and you care about my mental space. And if I could just know that this was happening, I know it's an imposition, but it would just be really kind for me.
That's
so
the
guilt,
one I use all the time. That's the one, even that I used at the time.
Absolutely.
Mom, you love me so much, but the stress that this is causing me, I'm not able to do my work. My kids are watching me unravel right now. That's exactly what I do.
Right. So guilt can be used in all kinds of ways, depending on the index. Say that doesn't work. They really don't want anyone in their house. Okay. Part of what you could think about is, again, what is the problem we're trying to solve for? Is it that you're worried that they're going to fall and they can't get up, like the old commercial that we used to have in Canada, right? I've fallen and I can't get up. There's actually a ton of integrated technology that you can use now. Pressure sensitive floors. You can look at your refrigerator where you can automatically reorganize refrigerators if you're worried they're not eating. You can think about not just the old style, like things around the net, but actually there's many, many, many ways of having integrated care. So if you're worried because they're going to fall or they're not eating or whatever else, you can give choices. Okay, Dad, I get it. This is the problem we're trying to solve for. So is it that you're going to eat at the local restaurant every day? Are we going to have Uber orders for Uber Eats for you? Could you have this grad student who's really needing a place to live? Maybe we could do that, what we call the Canada Home Share Program. Maybe he could stay in this room, for a reduced rent. It would really help him. And, you're a principal of a teacher and you always like having kids around. Maybe they could walk the dog for you and do a few things that would really help. The housing crisis is so bad, right? So find what the problem you're trying to solve for and then do it. If none of those things work, and I always, I have these conversations, I have the bottom one that's like the nuclear option, right? Like it's not a pretty one, and it's maybe not the best way in. And if you've tried technology, you've tried guilt, you've tried, you're helping somebody out, you've tried having co-housing or some type of other type of system or check-in or whatever, and none of these things work, but they really need help. It's usually the threat of having to move, honestly.
So
like that's
yeah.
It's usually like, we can do this or you can do that. You choose. And I'm open to it. And I'm empowering you. We'll go and look at other places. And then you'll think about this and you let me know what you want to do.
So I call that really those tough love conversations, right? And sometimes that's the only way to do it, right? Because there's so much resistance. And at one point, it's that tough love that you love them so much, and you have to be, especially when you're caring for a person living with dementia who's living alone. It's like you want them to be happy, safe, and clean. Like for me, those were the objectives, right?
And the other piece of it is, and the book really, in the whole sort of third chunk, talks about the fact that actually you may not like them at all. That's really important to remember. You may hate your parents. This may be your stepfather that molested you. This may be your drunk uncle that, essentially gambled the fortune away. This may be somebody that actually you shouldn't be making decisions with. And it may be that you need to check in with yourself and say, I don't think I'm well placed emotionally, socially, relationally to be this person. I'm actually like ready to throttle you and I barely like you to begin with. You know what? You're on your own. And that may be the right thing to do. You may have to hand it off to somebody else. You may do some auditing of your own self and try to figure like, well, this is what I can do, or this is what I'm willing to do. based on our relationship. And, maybe what I respectfully say is, you know what, maybe this should be somebody else that does this for you, and actually exit.
So there will become or may become a time where, families have done everything they can to try to keep the person at home for as long as possible, and it
Sure.
just no longer works, right? So the emotionally charged conversation about it's time to move to whether that be assisted living or long-term care.
Mhm. Yeah.
How do we start that conversation?
If you are one of those rare beings, and I've only met a handful in my life that's really open to having this very clear conversation, you don't need to read this chapter. But for everybody else, it's important to unpack what that means. So again, coming from a strengths and preference-based conversation is really important. What do you love about where you live? What do you miss about things that are happening? Having it around other people, proxy conversations can be very helpful. So you may not be able to say, hey, mom, I think it's time that we actually start looking at assisted living. And I'm using assisted living because like long-term care is a bit of a different, like a CHLSD application process can be a bit different. But if it's kind of a choice-based idea, they may not tell you what they like or don't like. But you could ask about Mrs. Lee across the street. How's she doing? Oh, used to play bridge with her or softball with her or go to music lessons. Oh, she's in that horrible place. Her son put her there and she's miserable. Okay, mental no. What was the place called? You don't like her? Oh, and how about, Mrs. Smith over here or Mrs. Theriot? Oh, well, actually, she's in a very nice place, and the food is actually very. Oh, so Mrs. Terrios, the food is very good, right? So sometimes you can come at it from the sides, and let's be clear, probably they know what you're doing also, but you're getting preferences and concerns. Think about what activities they like to do, because it's critically important that the walls of an assisted living, seniors housing, any type of congregate health and care don't be walls that keep people in. Right? You want to make sure. So, do they love art? Then let's get next to the art gallery. Do they like outdoors? They've always been part of like a ski community? Okay, well, they might not be skiing anymore, but they might want to be near some type of outdoor activities or sports or sort. So they love education. They might want to be near one of the many higher education. So think about a shift in their interests and actually co-location. I always say it's great if they have a program for that, but remember, programs change. And so it's good if you could think about what's in the community that won't change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important. And I also was thinking, when you're saying make sure the walls don't keep them in. I mean, most people can't afford private residences, which are so expensive, and then when it gets to the time where they are in long-term care, I would, a lot of people's pension covers the cost in the public system. And I would have somebody go in, a couple of hours a day, this lady that would take my mother and bring her outside for some fresh air, or just make sure she got to those activities. Or like you said, depending where they're situated, if the person could take them out of the building and, wheel them to the park or just something. But it's true, like what's the surrounding environment of where you're choosing is so important.
Building on that point, like I never advocate lying. Don't get me wrong. It's not.
Well, there's the compassionate lie. The compassionate lie.
Sometimes you can frame things in a certain way, and that's important. So, for a person who's very, very proud, who does or is worried about money, particularly if you've got kind of a depression era mentality, you might be able to say, well, you've paid your taxes and now this is part of the thing. That works sometimes. Lots of times it still doesn't quite resonate because they don't necessarily think of themselves as a person who should be getting those things. Someone else needs it, an old person, even though they're 90. But what I mean, like it's a shift. So you can say that, this is the thing that they do. And if they're not doing this thing, then, I guess they're not going to have a job. Or you can say things like, oh, they need to get out and get their steps. It's really important for them, which is I'm sure true. It would be, but they can't go out alone. And it would be really, really helpful if you would agree to go with them. I know you know a lot about birds. She's trying to learn about birds. Maybe you could spend some time helping her with that or her grandkid. Like these are all true things. It's just a way of framing it to match what a person's pride and dignity and need, as well as fears and worries are.
So let's talk about health and cognitive issues. Okay, I'm going to try to merge some of the questions together. And one of the most common frustrations, I guess, that I hear from families is when family starts noticing that a person has cognitive
Yeah,
issues or even like hearing loss or something, right? The parent refuses to go see the doctor,
for
right?
sure.
There's nothing wrong with me. I remember when I wanted to take my mother for the first time to see the neurologist, she says, "There's nothing wrong with me. I think there's something wrong with you, Claire," right? So, how do you, like, there again, compassionate lies, like, okay, we both need to go for our annual physical
Yep.
checkup or something. But how do you push through that?
Yeah. So some people love going to healthcare, and lots of people don't anyway. So it's important to remember who they always were. So my father hates going to the doctor, has never liked going to the doctor, grew up in the far north. That wasn't a thing that they did. Like, you'd be fine, put some, I don't know, pour some vodka on it or rum on it or whatever alcohol you had and like, maybe put some ice on it. That cures almost everything, right? Like, okay, so think about who they are. If they've always been a hypochondriac, you can use that. Oh, you're right. I think it's very important we get that checked too. Who knows what it could be? So if they're a person who really likes the idea of drama, lean into the drama. If they're a person that never liked going to the doctor, you're going to have to be creative and look back what has worked in the past. My experience is sometimes if there's a partner or someone that they're concerned with, shouldn't give out all my tricks, but right. So if you're trying to get your dad says everything's wrong with your mom says everything's wrong with your dad, neither of them will confront the issue and no one's going to the doctor, right? Like, and I'm using a stereotypical type of environment, right? So you can say things like, well, dad, if you would go with mom, maybe she would go. I know that you've been really concerned about mom. She's falling, there's urinary tract infections, whatever else. And we need to do the whole gamut of tests on her. But if you made it not think it was all about her, if you also went, like that would be really helpful. Then you tell your mom, oh, daddy's so stubborn, he'll never go. I mean, if you could just go and show him, maybe if I don't know what it is that you and your father, right? Whatever it is, if you could go, then they each take each other doctor and you get everything. So sometimes that's helpful. I did one once where there was a grandchild who was afraid of getting vaccinations. Like, well, was afraid of getting a shot. I desperately needed the older persons to get their pneumonia vaccine, their shingles vaccine, their RSV vaccine, and their COVID vaccine, as well as their flu shot, right? Like these ones. And it was the kid's fear. Kid was like whatever, 6 or something. But what I said was, oh, like, if we could all go together, if you could show or hold the hand and then get it, like that would be helpful. So think about what are the relational pieces that can help them move from either their fear or their, dislike into it. The other real challenge is lots of people can't get healthcare. Like it's not, 1 in 10 Canadians don't have a family doctor. If you're in a rural community, it's even harder. So you may need to be a little bit creative. I think the pharmacist is your best friend.
Yeah.
Right? Very often they won't go to the doctor, but they'll go to the pharmacist. Mm-hmm. And so a little talk with the pharmacist, or you're there, maybe you're getting your flu shot, maybe they're getting a prescription for something, or what you ask a question about something. That's an opportunity. And sometimes if the pharmacists say, oh yeah, you should get that checked out, or there's a clinic here in the pharmacy, sometimes there's actually a health clinic, like that can often be a way in that keeps the dignity and the ease without confronting the white coat syndrome.
Actually, you just said something that gave me an aha moment because a lot of, like, for example, some of the families that I'm working with, the spouse has passed away. So it's mom or dad living alone, right?
Yeah.
So how do you get that person to the doctor? And I was just thinking when you talked about the relational issue would be maybe there's a favorite nephew or a favorite niece or the favorite neighbor that could go with them, right?
That's it.
Because sometimes the adult daughter or son could be living out of town, but
yeah.
that who does that person really like and respect and trust that could go with them, right, to a medical appointment if the spouse has passed away.
And building on that, if you can tether it around something that they're already good with, it helps. So you know what? They're fine getting their eyes checked. Okay. Well, you're getting your eyes checked. And then after that, because eye health is important to whatever, do those two things together. That's not a scary thing to get your eye checked. It may be scary that you're worried about diabetes, which is, diabetic retinopathy. So maybe you can tie those two things together. Getting your flu shot's usually a thing that actually seniors are really excited to get. That's a really important thing. While you're there getting your flu shot, can you have a little laundry list of other things to do? So bundling is your friend.
So the topic about alcohol use among older adults is often overlooked, right?
Absolutely.
So how can families bring up this delicate subject respectfully?
There's different eras of thinking about alcohol too, and different cultural norms, right? So if you're from a teetotaling culture that doesn't drink, or you have a religious or cultural background where you don't drink, seeing that person have 3 glasses of wine with dinner may be a shock, right? So understand that you're bringing your own bias to it. Okay, that's quite different than, dad being soused at 2 o'clock every day. And part of what I would ask you to think of is, what's the life course on this? Is this a new behavior or an existing behavior? Dad has always started drinking at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's how that is. Chances of getting them to stop need to be really assessed, right? And so to have a good understanding, if they're 95 years old, your chances of getting them to stop drinking at 2 o'clock, like, don't worry about it. Then ask yourself, what is the problem we're trying to solve for? Is it really the alcohol, or is it falling because of the alcohol, right? Is it really the alcohol, or is it the fact that they've now got Korsakoff syndrome as a form of cognitive impairment due to their alcoholism, right? What's the problem we're trying to solve for? Is it the problem of the alcohol, or the problem that if you take booze and their meds, they're going to have a terrible interaction? So we need to sort of solve that. I would say, there's lots of things you can do. It's particularly with people with cognitive impairment. I've seen many, many people take advantage of this whole new zero alcohol spirits beer. It's the biggest initiative right now in the beverage section, and start kind of watering it. So if they're always having their rum and Coke, right? Maybe it's 50% regular rum, 50% zero alcohol rum, and it's the same, and you can kind of level that. So if you're the substitute decision maker, but you know that your dad really shouldn't be drinking, maybe there's a way of not watering the drinks, but using some dilution tactics to actually assist. Understand that if the person is a heavy drinker and you just stop them giving alcohol, they're going to go through withdrawal, right? Like, then if you're thinking, why are they acting like that? Why are they lashing out? Well, it's not a behavioral response from dementia. It's a behavioral response because they're under alcohol withdrawal. So you can't just be flippant about it, and don't be too judgy about it either, is what I would say.
I think also, like you said, if a person is, whether they're in their 80s or 90s, at some point, maybe the family has to get to the point where they have to realize there's nothing you can do. And although you need to protect the safety of others, so if the person is drinking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then getting into the car and driving, well, then the family take away the car. Right? That's it. And then the car is gone.
And I think just building on that point is really important. It's that, what's the problem we're trying to solve for? Also, plus choices. Okay, Dad, you say you really want to live on your own, and you say you want to continue driving. You're a little sketchy on the driving kind of thing. And you want to, you like your rye and ginger. Okay. So what are those things? You're not allowed to drink and drive anyone. No one's allowed to drink and drive. That's not about your age. Just no one's allowed to do it. Are we going to get Uber set up for you? Are you going to get rid of your car? Are you what are those ways that we're going to work together? And what would you ask somebody else? One of the things that can be helpful is using, again, the relationships where they're outside of their own defensiveness and thinking about it. So, Dad, my eldest kid, your grandchild is, they really started drinking a lot. And I've started knowing that they're drinking at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, they're getting drunk at school. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And, I'm so worried they're going to be driving. So sometimes giving a different approach where they're seeing it in a different way, gently and with dignity, allows them to see things from a different point of view. And then you don't have to go say, oh, and by the way, what about you? You can kind of sort of massage that idea. But again, what are the clear and present risks? And are they mentally capable of making those decisions? That's a different question.
So let's go into driving.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's favorite topic.
I always say, let the doctor make that decision, because when family members want to take
risks, they don't. The doctors don't pull the licenses. This is the problem. They don't. They don't want to do it. I would love to meet my doctor to make this decision.
I have to say, they're with the help of the family, they will. They will work with you for sure. But driving, how do we address that topic?
So here's the good news. The good news is, on the whole, older drivers, even those with some kind of mild cognitive impairment, I'm not talking people with profound dementia here, I'm just talking in the early stages, are generally not bad drivers. The worst drivers statistically are young men between sort of, 16 and 24. Like those are actually the big dangers, right? So first question is, what does driving mean to that person? And what does that driving mean to that person's life? So individually and then in their life. Okay. Are they worried about their license because they can't go to the chalet?
Mm-hmm.
And that is critically important that they go to the chalet. And if they can't get to the chalet, like so much of their well-being is completely profound. But it's not that they need the car all the time. They just need to get to the chalet. So is it that you're a man and driving was a rite of passage and you're really, really invested in the dignity? And that was very generational. Actually, we're shifting away from that, but it was very, very generational, particularly for folks in their later years right now. And if so, we have to think about it from a dignity point of view in a different way. Is it that your mom is actually willing to reduce her driving? And so overwhelmingly older women, and his gender on this one, will self-limit. And so that you don't go on the big highways.
Mm-hmm.
You'll drive in your local community and you'll drive in the day when it's nice, right? So older women tend to limit themselves ahead of time more than men. And so what I've noticed, and this is just a hack, I don't have any research to back this up, honestly, but it seems to work. Okay. There's a difference between science and like Laura's idea. This is Laura's idea. Okay. Blaming a third party thing or a change in technology is very helpful and very dignified. I used to have no problem driving at light, but those new LED headlights that just blind you, it's not like it used to be 5 years ago when I would drive at night and they were fine. But now, Uncle Sam, I don't know. Do you find that those terrible lights, and it's actually true, I do find it's terrible lights, right? They're horrible. And oh, yes, I mean, it was. So that's a way that's not about them. It's a way about a change that's happened. Mm-hmm. You remember when they used to do proper snow plowing and proper salting? Well, the municipality doesn't do that anymore. It's terrible. I don't know what they're doing with our taxes. I'm just not going to drive on that like how it used to be now. I mean, it used to be fine when they used to do it properly, but now they're not doing it, which may also, by the way, be true. Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to do that. It's a terrible shame with our taxes. Also, now I'm not going to drive. And at the end, I don't recommend lying to people, but if things get dire, there's things that you can use relationally and tricks of the trade. You know what? Your nephew is off to McGill. We're so proud. He could really use a car to help him move in. Do you mind if he could borrow your car for a little bit just till he gets settled? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying steal the car. I'm not saying that. But then maybe you could say things like, oh, he's really appreciating having a car. And I don't know if, do you need it as much? Maybe you could sell it to him. He doesn't have a lot of money. He's a student, right? So there's ways that are dignified. And so he could tell the story, I wasn't using my car that much and my nephew really needed it. So I just thought, I'll let him have it for cheap. That's a good story as opposed to.
It's a compassionate lie, right? That's what we right?
I also say, if things get worse to worse, you take the batteries out of those key fobs, you can unhook the spark plugs, you can take, the battery.
There's been a recall on the car, right?
There's a recall on the car, or the car has to go to the shop and then, they still haven't got that part in. I mean, those are, again, I don't think of lying, but there are ways to do it that's helpful. But again, always understand, what does transportation mean to that one person and or as a couple. So I have a couple that I know right now. She's got significant, increasing cognitive impairment. He has decreasing vision. And I don't know, like they each are driving and neither of them should be driving, right? And so the concern is he would drive because of her cognitive impairment, but now she was driving because of his eye vision. And in the end, it's a kind of a disaster for both.
So let's move on now to legal and financial matters.
My favorite stuff.
So 50, I would say 50% of the families that I meet with, the first two questions I ask a family when I work with them is, how much do you know about the disease, right?
Right. Sure.
And second of all, who has power of attorney, right? Yeah. And 50% of them say, oh, I do. And the other 50% say, oh, we haven't even begun that, right? So how can adult children overcome resistance when parents are reluctant to share financial information or even begin to talk about anything to do with their legal matters?
So if 50% of your people that you're supporting are in this, they are already ahead of the national average. It's about 30% of people have a substitute decision-making document. So I'm going to use the term, power of attorney, even though that means different things. So what I'm talking about when I say that, and it's a mandat, it's a representation agreement in BC, it's a healthcare directive and other. So fundamentally across the country, no matter what you call it, there's two documents you need. Not one, there's two. One is about your finances and property. And when I say property, people think, oh, I need to own a house. No, it's like do you have a pair of socks, like anything that you own. Your Facebook password is property, right? So your stuff is what I call it. And you need one for your body. Fundamentally, you need one. And then people say, oh, I've got all that. But what they have is a will. You're like, great. Your stuff in your body, you're already dead. I mean, that you do need that. That's a separate thing. I'm talking about when you're alive. Oh, all right. So only about 30% of people have it. And when it comes to finance, I tell you the best way that I get people to do it is I tell them, by the way, there's no default list. So what I mean when I say that is if you're hit by a car, and I don't make it about dementia, I make it about an accident that could happen to anybody at any age. So take age out. You're in a car accident. You know those crazy people on the roads,
You're
right?
hit by COVID. You're in the hospital. You've got pneumonia, like something.
Yeah, something.
Terrible.
But often I try to make it something that a young person could experience out of the blue. So car accident's a good one, or fall off a mountain when you're hiking, even if they haven't hiked in 30 years, right? So take it away from age-based illness or perception of ageist concerns. Right? Just make it something that could happen. You're crossing a street, you get hit by a bus. It doesn't matter how old you are. 19, 39, 99. You're hit by a bus. It's got nothing to do with how old you are, right? And say, did you know that if you get hit by a bus in a car accident, fall off a mountain, no matter what, it doesn't just go to your spouse to make decisions. It doesn't go to your kids to make decisions. It doesn't go to your friend to make decisions. Nobody can make a decision for you. It goes in Quebec to the public curator. In other parts of the country, public guardian trustee. It goes to the government, an agency of the government who will take over your finances and, by the way, charge you to do that. So if they hate paying money to other people, they'll be like, oh, if they hate the government being involved in their business, and it helps them untether that I don't need to look at it because there's probably a system that comes to play. And then you say, and this is true for any adult. So your grandkids, we're doing theirs. They're 21 and 22. They're going backpacking. We're getting that done because, I don't have any ability to pay even if I need to buy crutches for somebody. I can't do that. I can't get into their banking. That takes it out of aging. And it's dignified for anyone. And you're literally going, what? There's no backup? What are you talking about? No. And then I say things like, look, when we moved in, I set up the electrical bill and my husband set up the Wi-Fi. It wasn't any particular reason. It was just, I did. But his name's not on the electrical bill and my name's not on the Wi-Fi. And so if he's in a car accident or gets appendicitis and whatever happens to him, I can't fix the Wi-Fi. And if I'm in there, he can't fix the electrical bill. And it's a huge problem. And those terrible companies, right? Now privacy, right? So you can use these things and they're all true. Don't get me wrong. When it comes, then after you deal with the finance, then you come into healthcare afterwards, right? Because that's the more sensitive issue in many cases. And then in healthcare, yes, there's a default list and every jurisdiction is a little different. So you show them what the default list is. And then you're like, so, your 5 children, all of them have to weigh in together or, your whatever, they're going to get into a fight. So it would be best if you could pick somebody so that they know. And if you show them the default list, there's no default list for finance. There is one for health. Show them what it is. Let them know what like a disaster it's going to be. That helps people untether it from their illness or their cognitive concern or their aging and makes it about anyone and get them all done at the same time if you can. The other piece I would offer is ask your parents' advice. It's one of the few things parents still really love. Doesn't matter how old you are, right? I could not get my dad to show me his finances and he does all the finances for my parents. And I am the substitute decision maker. But I didn't know his passwords, where it was, where the documents were. I didn't have a copy of the power of attorney. I didn't know what they spent money on or how. But I'm somehow supposed to be the one, jointly with my brother, who wants nothing to do with it, by the way. This is not an unusual story. Didn't matter what I do, it got redirected. And my mom won't talk about any of it. Doesn't matter. She won't talk about any of it. It's all like, she doesn't want to know anything about it. She doesn't want to talk anything about it. I'm like, we need 2 approaches here. Finally, what worked is I asked my dad, Even he's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. His area of law is not this, by the way. Mine is. Doesn't matter. I said, Dad, April or February or whatever, the taxes are coming, and those estate people, the bank, the insurance company, the whatever the third party thing is that's making me do this, I have to do it. And I was just thinking, I'd love to know what you did. Yeah. Do you have a good one? I would love to compare and get some ideas for you. Do you have a person that you use? All of a sudden, how fast did I get that document? Because he was sharing his expertise with me as opposed to me telling him that he's good. And then we both realized, oh, yours is 20 years out of date. Well, let's get a deal. Let's go together. Let's do something. And so that is an area where he's using it. Now, my mother, she will not talk about it anyway. It doesn't matter. There's no way, I can't get at it. But she's strong opinions on it. So we have what we call the death drawer, even though it's not about death. She writes things down. And she puts them in a drawer, and I go and I open the drawer and I take pictures of everything she's said, because you can make your desires. And I literally left her a power of attorney kit in the death drawer. And then a month later, I opened it and she'd filled it out and it was there, but we never spoke about it. So totally different approach.
So I only have time for one more question. Thank God for this book that people have to get. And now you can go through all this. One more question, which I think is an important one. So whether it's dementia or caring for an older parent, it can cause a tremendous amount of conflict among family members.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So what advice would you give to families where siblings disagree about what's best for the parents? Now, I say siblings, but sometimes there could be the stepmom.
Sure,
or
it could be anything. There's an entire chapter about what are the different tasks that you're doing, who's good at them, and if you pay somebody else, how easy or what cost can it be? So instead, and that's kind of one of the reasons I wrote the book, is so it's not just Susan from Calgary sweeping in and telling all the siblings what to do and sweeping out again, which, there's always one that's got an opinion. Mm-hmm. And then there's real worries. Often it's the unsuccessful son in the basement that's actually providing a lot of the care, but he doesn't really have a job, or, he's overcoming his addictions or whatever. So it may not be the ideal person, but he's actually the person on the ground. And the reason why Susan can fly in from Calgary is because the unsuccessful son in the basement, for all his faults, is physically in the home, right? So I take a task-based approach and literally have a chart, and you can go through it, and then you can decide, you want to pay for it? Can you find a community-based agency to support you? What's a hack? You could order from your favorite restaurants to come in. What are the different ways of doing it? And that takes it away from me telling you what's important and what's not important. And I think that works pretty well. What I would offer is finances. If you're going to be Susan from Calgary, or, Jean-Francois from Nova Scotia, actually do know Jean-Francois from Nova Scotia. Finances now can be done at a distance in the way that personal decisions and home care can't be. So if you're looking to involve people who are farther away and they're good at finance or bill paying or whatever, that can be mostly done at a distance.
Laura, how do people get a copy of your book?
Well, the nice thing is you can go anywhere. You go to any bookstore and online. My husband runs a company called Rakuten Kobo, which is an ebook company. He'll tell you that you can get the ebook. What I thought was interesting is that a lot of people are downloading the audiobook, which makes a lot of sense, because if you're busy going to soccer practice, trying to figure out your PowerPoint presentation, trying to sort out how you're going to get to, pick up your mom in Quebec City, having the audiobook on is really helpful. It's a just-in-time book, so you can open up any chapter and it's complete unto itself. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to read the thing from beginning to end, and I promise you're going to laugh. And it will be out bilingually in French as well. I think it's just finally is, but it's also many, many Canadians are working in different languages. You can get it in Greek, you can get it in Mandarin, you can get it in different Ukrainian languages and so on. So that's important as well. If they are already working in their second or third language, sometimes it's helpful to get them the resource in their first language, so it's simpler.
I think what attracted me so much to your book was the book that my team and I at McGill created, which is really very similar, right? But this is a companion guide on how to take care of a person living with dementia. And that's also available in 14 languages. And you could download it off of our website. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you are in great demand across the country, if not on an international level. So thank you so much for taking the time. And I really encourage everyone to get a copy of this book, because it is like really essential conversation. So thank you so much, Laura.
My pleasure. And it will hopefully make you laugh at the same time. This is a book that will make you laugh out loud, and it's meant to do that in addition. I just want to say thank you, Claire. And I know that the listeners will know this, but in case someone's listening for the first time, I cannot tell you that the program that you have started up at McGill is not just groundbreaking in your own community. It's actually being replicated around the world, and it has a huge, huge impact on people's lives at the time where they need it the most, but also in clinicians' lives who are mostly not taught this stuff. So I'm deeply grateful of the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So this webcast is an initiative of the McGill University Dementia Education Program, which is funded by private donations. If you would like to make a donation to our program or for more information, please visit our website at mcgill.ca/dementia, and you could sign up for our newsletter. So all McGill webcasts are recorded and available for you to view at your convenience on our website. Please share this amazing webcast with friends if they weren't able to watch today. Thank you so much.